So it might be an understatement to say that video games have been an important part of my life for as long as I can remember. Quite literally, the earliest memory I have is of playing Super Mario World at my grandmother's house. At every stage of my life, games as an art form have influenced me in more ways than I can count, more so than any other medium of art. I wish I could say it's hard to choose anyone in particular that has influenced me the most, but it's really not. It's Earthbound. This silly little game from 1994, more than any other piece of media, holds a truly special place in my heart, and inspires every creative thing I do and plan to do in some way. That might seem like an exaggeration, and I guess maybe it is a little, but Earthbound does have a tendency to grip people in a way not many games do. The community that spawned surrounding the game, its prequel, and its sequel is infamous for being one of the most passionate, creative, and ravenous fandoms out there. And really, a huge part of the reason Earthbound has made such a lasting impact on my life is a direct result of that community.
Save the planet in Earthbound from Nintendo.
So I don't want to spend too much time going over the content of Earthbound. There's a million different videos, retrospectives, and articles that go into detail about everything that makes it such a work of art, better than I ever could. And honestly, Earthbound and the other two games in the series can only really be understood by experiencing them yourself. But at the same time, I feel that it's impossible to have any meaningful discussion on the game and its community without first establishing the history behind it and where it's coming from, especially for those who might not be familiar with it. So Earthbound, or Mother 2 as it's known in Japan, is, believe it or not, the second of 3 games in the Mother series created by a man named Shigesato Itoi. Itoi is a sort of jack-of-all-trades celebrity in Japan who received a ton of notoriety in the 1980s as a copywriter, television personality, and writer. In the late 80s, he met with Shigeru Miyamoto, not sure you've heard of him, I think he made a game called Mario or something, to pitch an idea for an RPG that took place in a contemporary modern setting, which was a novel concept at a time where every JRPG had knights and dragons and slimes. The game would eventually become the original Mother and was released on July 27, 1989, to mostly positive reviews. In 1990, a team at Nintendo of America under the famed Phil Sandhop began and completed an English localization of the game, including a whole bunch of gameplay improvements, censoring of violence and drug use, and a name change to Earthbound, with a space in the middle. But because of the high cost of making such a huge game fit on an NES cartridge, plans of including a full guidebook with the game, and the impending release of the Super Nintendo, the game was cancelled and shelved, setting a precedent for the Mother series having trouble getting released in the West. At the same time, Itoi was already working on the sequel to Mother on the Super Famicom, and it wasn't going very well. The game was in development hell for years before a programmer named Satoru Iwata, again kind of an obscure guy, not sure you've heard of him, came on the team and helped clean up the mess. Thanks to his help, the game released only a year behind schedule on August 27, 1994 as Mother 2. In terms of overall vibe and plot, it was very similar to its predecessor, but improved in just about every single way. With a charming cast of characters, a huge soundtrack of absolute bops, and immaculate writing, this game was bursting at the seams with Itoi's signature personality, and was received super well because of it. And this time, Nintendo of America cracked down on its localization. A game dev at Nintendo named Marcus Lindblom was given the task of not directly translating the game's script, but instead reworking it into an English version of it. He was given free rein to make the script as weird as he wanted, and injected his own unique voice into every line. The game also got its own share of censorship and visual reworkings to appeal to an American audience before being released on June 5th, 1995. Stealing the name Earthbound from the cancelled Mother localization, in a big-ass box with a freaking awesome player's guide, no less. Unfortunately, Western audiences didn't seem to take to it, and the game got mixed reviews and flopped commercially for a number of reasons. The size of the box kept it from being sold on store shelves with the other SNES games, and the gross-out marketing synonymous with 90s American pop culture claiming this game stinks definitely contributed to Earthbound not selling well. The biggest factor in Earthbound's commercial failure, however, was the lack of interest for JRPGs in general outside of Japan at the time, especially for one as out there as Earthbound. Hot off the heels of Mother 2's huge Japanese popularity, however, Itoi began working on a third installment for the Mother series. At first, development on Mother 3 began on the Super Famicom before shifting over to the new Nintendo 64. Itoi had huge ambitions for the project, and hoped that the 3D capabilities of the new console would open up a ton of possibilities. The game got too ambitious though, and was scaled back in scope, while being brought over to the N64 disk drive peripheral for more processing power. But when the 64DD completely flopped in Japan, and just failed to see a release anywhere else, the game was brought back to the standard N64 cartridge format. Overall, the game just hit a ton of unfortunate roadblocks due to poor planning. During a three-way discussion between Iwata, Miyamoto, and Itoi, Iwata himself even regretted the direction the game took, saying that he really questioned how much Itoi and his team should focus on creating a 3D world when Itoi is a man whose greatest talent lies in words. Mother 3's cancellation announcement was released at the same time as that discussion, not long after being announced for North America as Earthbound 64, so yet again the Earthbound series was faced with another setback in terms of Western releases. Itoi wasn't done with the Mother series just yet though, and alongside an announcement for a port of Mother 1 and Mother 2 for the Game Boy Advance in 2003, Mother 3 was also revealed to be back in development for the GBA. This time Itoi used a visual style similar to the first two games in the series while keeping the exact plot from the N64 version, with only a few tweaks to the overall pacing and the ending sequence. After a relatively smooth development cycle compared to Mother 2's, Mother 3 was finally released on April 20th, 2006, 12 years after development first started in 1994. Learning from the failed localization of Mother 1 and the commercial flop of Earthbound, however, Nintendo of America decided not to bring Mother 3 to the West, and to this day, both Mother 3 and the bundle Mother 1 Plus 2 still remain Japan exclusives. So that's a very brief overview of the Mother series' development history. Since the release of Mother 3 13 years ago, Itoi has stated that he has no intention of making future installments and instead focuses on other ventures like his company Hobonichi. Regardless, in Japan, Nintendo continued supporting the series by releasing all 3 games on the Wii U Virtual Console, and even having a playable demo of Mother 2 in the Japanese version of Super Smash Bros. Brawl. But outside of Japan, there was complete radio silence on anything Earthbound since the cancellation of Earthbound 64, and nothing had even been officially playable since the game's original North American release on the SNES in 1995. It took until 2013 for Nintendo to finally re-release the game in North America on the Wii U Virtual Console, also marking its first European release. And then, 2 years later in 2015, Nintendo surprised everyone by releasing the original localized version of Mother, now called Earthbound Beginnings, for the first time in the West on the Virtual Console. So while Mother 3 still is yet to be brought outside of Japan, the first 2 games in the series have gotten a lot of love in recent years. That's a stark contrast to the almost 20 years of nothing that Western Earthbound fans got, but it was during that 20-year period that those same fans got together and formed one of the tightest and most expressive video game communities out there. And it's because of that community that Nintendo finally caved in releasing Earthbound and Earthbound Beginnings at all.
Is this gonna be on DVD? If you guys make enough funny stuff, it will be.
So the Earthbound fandom for practically 20 years now has more or less revolved around the fan site Starman.net. Honestly, the two have become kind of synonymous. The earliest vestiges of the site first showed up in 1997 when a middle schooler from Indiana named Reed Young created a website called You Are Now Earthbound. Young, or Reedman as he was known on his site, eventually met another Mother fan online named Clyde Mandolin, or Tomato, and in 1999 the two went on to co-found Earthbound.net as the successor to Reed's site. They planned for this new website to be a sort of hub of info, community events and games, forums, and basically everything else Earthbound related on the late 90s Web 1.0. In fact, you can even go on the current day Starman.net and read the original email Clyde sent to Reed detailing his ideas, and it's totally wild. So backing up from Earthbound.net for a second, it was around this time in 1998 that someone on a separate online message board made a post titled Earthbound NES Cart for Sale, claiming to be selling a supposed prototype cartridge of the unreleased Mother 1 localization. It's unknown how the user, Mariotti, got their hands on the cart or even if it was real at the time, but a collector named Kenny Brooks took the risk and bought it for $100. At the same time, the team Neo Demiforce had been working on their own fan translation of the Japanese version before hearing about the prototype. One of the members of the team, Demi, got in touch with Brooks and was able to convince him to lend the cart so the ROM could be dumped online for a measly $400. As a result, Western fans finally got to experience the official English version of Mother 1, retitled as Earthbound Zero by Demi to differentiate it from the SNES sequel. Since then, 3 other prototype carts have popped up, circulating online amongst game collectors, plus at least one confirmed to be archived in Nintendo of America's headquarters. So back to Reed and Clyde. Later in 1999, they renamed their site to Starman.net, and it started to gain a lot of traction. As more and more Western fans of Earthbound learned about the games and the lack of support for the series outside of Japan, they got together on Starman.net to voice their passion for it. And this became one of the things that the website is known for all these years later, its insane petitions to show Nintendo how much they care about Earthbound. 3 petitions in total were held from 1999 to 2003. The first was intended to convince Nintendo to release Mother 1 on the Game Boy Color and received over 1,800 signatures. The second, held a year later, was an attempt at keeping Earthbound 64 from being cancelled and gathered over 10,000 signatures. It was wrapped up just as the game was officially scrapped. And the third and final petition was more open-ended and simply existed to make a statement to Nintendo that Western Earthbound fans existed and were willing to spend loads of money on more content. This time the petition tripled the signature count of the previous one, with over 31,000 people voicing their support, and it was sent to not only Nintendo of America, but also Nintendo of Japan, Video Game Magazine, Electronic Gaming Monthly, and Shigesato Itoi himself. There was never any official response, but Nintendo definitely took notice. In an interview with Nintendo of Europe, Miyamoto himself said, "You might not know this, but there was a petition in the US, Please Make Mother 3 petition, and it got about 30,000 signatures. After that we thought, wow, Earthbound fans are really solid." Even beyond the 3 written petitions, Starman.net hosted a bunch of write-in sieges of Nintendo Power and call-in events of Nintendo's service hotline, from 2000 all the way up to the Japanese release of Mother 3 on the GBA in 2006. With all this going on though, it's easy to forget that, for the most part, the core Starman.net community was just a bunch of kids growing up with each other over their shared love of the Mother series. If you ask people who were active in the community in the late 90s through the mid-2000s, you'll hear a ton of stories of meeting lifelong friends, discovering creative passions, and even falling in love with future partners through Starman.net. People's lives were literally being directly changed through their common interest in Itoi's games. Members of the community even started a convention of sorts that was held almost every year from 2001 to 2011. Originally, these started as a handful of the site staff flying in to hang out at Reed Young's house for a few days, but grew to upwards of 40 people at rented spaces around the US. I would absolutely kill to be in the room at one of these in the early 2000s and see a bunch of these sweaty people just playing Earthbound all weekend. So November of 2006, when it became clear that Nintendo wasn't going to bring Mother 3 stateside, a team of volunteers from Starman.net, led by Clyde Mandolin, started the other thing that the site is infamous for, the Mother 3 fan translation. Mandolin, since founding Starman.net, worked professionally as a Japanese to English translator on everything from anime like Dragon Ball Z to games like Kingdom Hearts 2. So putting his skills to use, he handpicked a dozen or so community members, Jeff Man being one of the most notable, and spent the next 2 years localizing the entirety of Mother 3. They practically work a second full-time job for free, with Mandolin and Jeff Man each working over 1,000 hours to translate the 1,000 pages of text and hacking the game's ROM to fit in line with the official Mother localizations. In October 2008, Starman.net released a translation, finally allowing English-speaking Earthbound fans to experience the final game in the Mother series. And it blew up, getting downloaded over 100,000 times in the first week alone, and receiving coverage from a bunch of different video game news outlets. The entire project also marked a shift in attitude from begging Nintendo to give them what they wanted towards a we'll-do-it-ourselves mindset. Along with the English translation, the team released a toolset for translating the game's script into any other language, letting anybody localize the game into their native language. Starman.net even spent months working on their own player's guide for the Mother 3 fan translation that released at the same time, taking inspiration from the official Earthbound one that released in 1995. During the development of the fan translation, Starman.net also launched another project, a marketplace to sell original merchandise inspired by games like Earthbound, named Fangamer. Started in 2007 on Starman.net, Fangamer got its own site in 2008, and grew exponentially every year since. Even to this day, Fangamer has a booth at almost every major gaming convention, and now has official lines of merch for games like Banjo-Kazooie and Persona 5. With the success of Fangamer, the Mother 3 fan translation, and the rise of YouTube Let's Plays shining light on Earthbound and mainstream gaming again, the Mother series and Starman.net continue to thrive well into the 2010s. In celebration of Mother 2's 20th anniversary in 2014, Fangamer launched a Kickstarter campaign to crowdfund a goodie bag of sorts of Earthbound merch, including a fanzine of art and written works, a cover album, and a player's guide of Earthbound in the same vein as their Mother 3 one, all held inside a replica of Ness's backpack. Called You Are Now Earthbound after Reed Young's original website, the Kickstarter also helped fund a feature-length documentary called Earthbound USA, which pretty much covers exactly what this video has been about so far. 5 years later, the documentary is still in development, but when it does come out, please watch it. Jazzy Benson has been working on it for like 6 years now. Probably the biggest legacy of You Are Now Earthbound, though, was the 200K stretch goal, promising a huge Earthbound-themed convention that backers could buy tickets to. The Kickstarter blew past that total by the time it was over, so in the summer of 2015, Camp Fangamer was held in Tucson, Arizona. There was a bunch of weird activities to do, a Mother merch museum, a retro game room, and a playthrough of Earthbound running for most of the day in the main theater in a talk show-esque format with Fangamer's Dan Moore acting as the host. Fangamer also not only got Shigesato Itoi himself to record a keynote address, but even scripted an in-universe plot that developed on stage over the course of the 2 days, culminating in a huge party against the final boss on the final night. It was the perfect Earthbound convention in how unconventional it was, and was successful enough to have 2 more. The one held the next year in 2016 celebrated the 10th anniversary of Mother 3, by focusing on more on that game than Earthbound, and one held last year in 2018 celebrated Fangamer's own 10th anniversary, showcasing a wider variety of games. So that pretty much brings us up to the present in terms of Starman.net and the Western Earthbound community as a whole. I tried to be as brief as possible and touch on the most important events from the last 20 years, but the thing with this community is that it's so rich in history that you could spend the next 20 years just reading up on every small anecdote and person involved, and I really encourage you to do so. I've had so much fun doing that in the past, and just like Earthbound itself, I'm still constantly learning new stuff about the history in the community. Which brings me to the last topic, my own experience with the Mother series and its fandom.
Welcome to my next Let's Play, Earthbound. This is probably my favorite game of all time.
So in the ancient year of 2009, I was at the tender age of 10 when I discovered what a Let's Play was. As a kid, I never really had friends that I would hang out with outside of school, and having just moved to a new town didn't really help either. So having Let's Play figures online that I could listen to talk about video games genuinely made me feel less lonely at the time. It wasn't long before I came across Chuck Conroy, one of the forerunners of the Let's Play format on YouTube, during his Pokemon Crystal series. With apparently nothing better to do as a dumb 10-year-old, I would watch and rewatch his series, and eventually even made my own awful Let's Plays trying to mimic his style. But it wasn't until early 2013 that I decided to watch his series on Earthbound. I played through it myself for the first time when it came out on the Wii U Virtual Console in 2013, and I can only think of one or two pieces of media that have since struck the same chord with me so quickly. I was so immediately enamored with the game's personality, the way the characters were written, how the story was told, the different areas, the enemies, the battles, the music. When I was 13, I actually used to say that Earthbound was a perfect game with nothing really wrong with it. Obviously, now that I'm not a complete fool, I know that the game has plenty of flaws and is far from a perfect game, but I still believe that it's the perfect game for me. Beyond the tangible aspects of the game that factor into it being a good or bad game, it's something more meta about it that really strikes me. The way it can be so joyously carefree and melancholic at the same time, for me, evokes such a feeling of genuine childhood nostalgia. I feel like this game has been with me all my life because it makes me feel the same way that memories of my childhood home or my dog as a puppy do. And it's something that only gets more potent with time. 6 years ago, I couldn't tell you why it meant so much to me, only that it did. And now here I am finding out more about myself as a person while trying to pinpoint it. The summer of 2013 was dedicated almost entirely to Earthbound, waking up excited to play it until I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore, falling asleep and repeating the next day. Even after I beat the game the first time, I totally immersed myself in the community online, catching up on everything that had happened in the early 2000s that I was just too young to experience. I fiended the Starman.net forums, reading posts left behind by users that hadn't logged on in years, contributing to more recent threads, and taking part in fanfests and art contests, specifically the Mother 1 25th anniversary in 2014. It wasn't too long after that I jumped into Mother 3, and had my young, unsuspecting heart completely thrashed. Since I haven't really mentioned it, there's a reason Mother 3's tagline was strange, funny, heartrending. It's a sad game. In a different way than Earthbound's melancholy themes on growing up, it's just straight up sad. Mother 3 is very different too, and in a ton of ways better than Earthbound, but for me it wasn't quite as impactful. Not that the ending still doesn't make me cry like a baby by watching it to this day, but it just doesn't evoke the same nostalgic feeling that I valued so much from Earthbound. Which is kind of the point. Itoi designed it to be a finale to the series after almost 20 years, and so it has a much different vibe. I'm honestly willing to bet that someday everything is going to click and Mother 3 is just going to hit as hard as Earthbound, but I'm just not at that point yet in my life, I think. And really the same goes for Earthbound Beginnings. I put off playing it for years after finishing the other two games because it can be kind of a slog to get through at points. I finally forced myself to get through it when it came out on the Virtual Console in 2015, and as a pre-established fan of the series, it was worth every second. I'm not sure if somebody without the same investment would enjoy it as much, but I believe it serves perfectly as a dessert to Earthbound and Mother 3's main course. In the same way as the third game though, it's trying to accomplish something very different with its story and overall vibe that just doesn't resonate with me as much. At least not at this point in my life. But again, that's not to understate how much Mother 3 and Earthbound Beginnings also mean to me, it's just that Earthbound is that much more special. In fact, the Mother series as a whole is a huge factor in why I decided to follow my passion for game development. Knowing a game like Earthbound can make me feel the way it does, I wanted to make something that might do the same, and it's my biggest artistic inspiration as a result. And I'm definitely not the only one. One of the most popular indie games in recent years, Undertale, was developed by Toby Fox, a member of the Starman.net community that practiced designing games by making Earthbound ROM hacks. even in other fields of art, there are so many Mother fans that take inspiration from eToys games, and it feels empowering being a part of that community that spawns creativity from creativity. And in addition to art, the intersection of the Earthbound community and the LGBT community has also been a huge force in my life. It's been comforting and helpful coming into my own identity and learning about myself over the years, alongside others who have experienced much the same stuff and have also been inspired by the same silly video game series as I have. So thank you for watching. I've been really procrastinating finishing this, and it's been over a month in the making with filming, but I poured my heart into it, hopefully, and I wanted to get this out originally for Mother 1's 30th anniversary, but I messed up, so this is instead coming out for Mother 2's 25th anniversary, which is still just as good because it's more focused on Earthbound anyway. So thanks for watching. Check out the other videos that we have currently up on the channel on Animal Crossing and Beat Happening.
Yes.
Do we only have 2 videos?
We only have 2 videos.
Oh, shit. There's more coming. There's a video on Joe Pera coming out, as well as another video from Ryan
on the Mountain Goats.
On Mountain Goats. I will be working on another video, hopefully on, I'm thinking maybe Steven Universe.
That'd be awesome, actually. I'm so down.
Shout outs to Anthony Fantano for sharing our first video.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Tight.
Thank you, Eggman. Melon Man.
Egg is Northern Line. Shout out to him too.
So I have a bunch of citations for stuff that I mentioned in the description. You can check those out, as well as links to a bunch of our Twitters. Might have my Twitch in there too. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Thanks
Bobby.
Bobby.
Wait, on 3, 2, 1, Bobby.
Yeah, 3, 2.
Bobby.